Hello, welcome back to All for United WFC. This is a bit weird, isn't it, doing it on a Tuesday night? I genuinely cannot remember the last show we did on a Tuesday evening, so this is something a little bit different. Hello to everyone in the chat. Yes, I had a feeling, Mia, you'd be straight in there with that kind of comment. We're going to start with Millie Turner in just a second. As the thumbnail and the title shows, we are going to be talking all like contracts. Barry last week spoke about the stadium, Polly Bancroft, and things around that. This week, we're going to discuss a little bit about the contracts. It feels a good time to talk in particular about Grace Clinton because she's not out of contract this summer. However, she is going to have a lot of interest in her, and she's only got a year left on her current deal anyway. So we're going to talk about her and then whatever else, when it comes to contracts and things like that. As you can see, I've got Keris and Matt joining me to talk through all of these things, so it's sure to be a good show as we dive into all of that. Matt, I'll come to you first and just start off. The comments have already mentioned it quite a few times, as I just brought up a second ago. And as Jay just said, Millie Turner debut. What's your thoughts on that one? Obviously, you can incorporate the Tooney goal as well if you want into that one. I've not seen it, so I can't possibly comment. But yeah, Tooney goal and Millie Turner, I guess, getting her England debut as well. How good that is for her on a personal level.
Yeah, I'll start with Millie. I think it was about 80 minutes roughly she came on, so she got sort of the last 10 minutes plus added time. It feels like a long time coming for me. I feel like she's had call-ups and she's been involved with squads, but not really been given a chance to show what she can do. And I think it's one of them until, you can see what somebody can do. You can't really make a judgment. There's a lot of people talk about England squads and who should be in and out and who doesn't deserve places. But I think these are the times now. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of friendlies personally, but I think, we've got chance now to test out sort of the up-and-coming players. Obviously, Grace, who we'll get onto later, is one of them. But yeah, I think it was good. Obviously, it was only, like I say, it was only Italy. But, you come on, you've got to start somewhere. And what a good start, for Millie. I'm sure she'll be pleased on a personal level as well. Tooney's goal, yeah, I know you mentioned you'd not seen it. Nice little cutback from Lauren James. It was typical Tooney, late arrival in the box and volleyed very nicely into the top corner. It was well placed as well. So, yeah, she seems to enjoy scoring for England, and long may that continue.
No, for sure. Mia, if you're still in the chat, I don't think she's going to like your "it's just Italy." Like she's got quite a thing for the Italians over there going on. But to be fair, they're a decent side. But like, what did it end? What did they finish in the end? 5-1. That's a bigger scoreline than I maybe would have thought. I don't watch a load of internationals, but that is a bit bigger than I would have thought. NC, I'll come to your question in a second. But Keris, over to yourself again. Just Millie Turner's been around, obviously, United squad since I guess the reincarnation, so on. She's been solid for us over the last couple of years. And do you think this is fully deserved, the fact that she's finally got her England call? Because Matt said that she's been in and out of the England squad, with call-ups and things. She's never got those minutes.
Yeah, no, I mean, she's one of my favourite players across like the years. She's always been one of my favourites, and to see her, like, I can't remember how many times now I've seen her called up, but obviously it was last squad as well. I think for the Nations League potentially, and it didn't quite happen. Whenever Millie Bright had to drop out, she was called up. It didn't happen for her. There was at least a couple of times before that as well. So it's felt really, really harsh on her because, she's put in such solid performances for United over the years. It's just such a competitive squad to get into. Obviously, it's not huge minutes tonight and it's only in a friendly, but really, really pleased to see that from her. And, hopefully that just, not that she really needs a confidence building, to be honest. I think one of my favourite things about her is as a centre-back, she's a very forward-thinking player. She'll be driving forward into those spaces and trying to progress the ball up the pitch. So I think, it'll do even more for her confidence, and hopefully we can see her getting some more minutes. I was really chuffed to see that.
No, for sure. And yeah, I think everyone's echoing that in the comments earlier. Obviously, with Norway got a big win tonight as well. I think 5-0 that might finish as well. I thought I'd mention that considering earlier in the chat because that was actually the game I had on. So keep an eye on there. That was a big win for Norway as well. Thought I'd bring this question. Yes, I may have tweeted about this, and I think I put a TikTok out about it as well. I can't believe, I mean, of all teams to watch this season, fair play to her. Keep an eye on the WSL, and I know obviously you mentioned Garcia and Jen. That's her reasons for it, but Yeah, if she was expecting last season's performances, I think we might have put her off. I don't think she's going to be coming back to watch it anytime soon, that's for sure. Right, we're moving on to Grace Clinton next. That is obviously the bulk of the show that we're going to kind of discuss here. And I guess I'll just start because we've not really spoken about it. We've not done a player profile on her or anything like that this season. Only obviously we played Spurs, but obviously she didn't feature obviously because of the loan on that one. But Matt, how impressed have you been with her this season? You know, her loan Spurs. Obviously, we know she's been on a couple of loans now. A second with us. Obviously, came from Everton as well. What have you made of her this season? Are you surprised at how well she's done, or do you think she's always kind of had this in
her? I wouldn't say surprised. I think I briefly sort of heard little bits of the name mentioned when she was with Everton. And I think anyone that saw her in that spell saw a very confident young player that was probably up there with one of their better players at the time. But I think, fair play. She's gone out to Spurs, obviously quite a way away from home as well, only being young. And sort of, I don't know what's the term, taking like a duck to water, I guess, if we're comparing it. I think she's on 4 or 5 goals, assisting as well. I see quite a lot of Spurs fans sort of on my Twitter timeline sort of raving about her, wanting to keep her. I think there was a lot of, from what I gathered, a lot of sort of skeptical Spurs fans. Like they were thinking, why have we got her? Why is this? Why is that? But I think slowly they've come to realise that actually she's a very good player. And I think obviously the more she plays, as with any young player, the better she's going to get. And it just seems like each week she's getting there, and obviously she's had this England call up, she's made a debut, and it's good to see. And I know you want to talk about in more detail about sort of staying on what next, so I'll not chat too much, but I think, for any young player, you need to get out there, you need to be playing games. And unfortunately, she's not sort of been able to do that consistently for United yet. However, hopefully going forward, that'll be something that we will see for the future.
I was going to say, I'll come back to that as a separate question in terms of where she fits in at United, how we try and keep her and all those kind of things. But Keris, for yourself, what have you made of her this season? Because she's being spoken about by pretty much everybody now. And now, obviously, we saw last week she got her England debut and then straight away scores under 20 minutes. She's one of the hottest properties in the WSL right now from a youngster point of view, alongside somebody maybe like Maya Letizia and those types of players that we've got.
No, definitely. I think that watching her both for Spurs this season and also for England the other night, I didn't manage to catch the game tonight, but I watched the full match the other night, and I thought what really struck me was just how confidently she came into that side alongside some like really experienced players, and just played her football. Like she played her kind of confident and like forward thinking, energetic brand of football. She wasn't sort of she wasn't shy about it at all. She wasn't playing it safe to try and get some more minutes. She clearly kind of been given that license to go and create and do what she wanted to do, which I think is something she's spoken about her time at Spurs. But yeah, no, I think she's definitely someone that I know we're going to move on to it, but unfortunately, keeping her has to be one of our priorities. But Spurs are at the other end of the country thinking that getting her to stay with them has got to be one of their priorities, and plenty of other clubs will be eyeing her up as well. So I think she's a really attractive prospect for a lot of clubs, and hopefully we can, show her that she's valued and show her that she'll be given that same license of creativity at United as well.
No, for sure. I see a lot of your comments talking about where she's going to fit in. I have a whole question just dedicated to that, so I'll come back to your comments in a second. I have started them to come back to. But yeah, I think it's going to be really tough because she's kind of announced herself now, as you said, obviously with Spurs, and then obviously going straight away with England, announced herself on the international stage as well. And it's like, yeah, I think this is going to be one of our biggest priorities, that's for sure. We'll come back to that in just a second now. But Matt, I guess another question around the loan I've got, because obviously someone just put it in the chat. She went to Bristol, did well there as well. I've seen, I guess it's a split on this one. Do you think it was right to loan her this season? Because some people are saying, well, she's clearly good enough because we've seen what she's doing in the WSL and obviously now for England. But also, do you think maybe we would have seen this if she hadn't have gone on loan? Where do you stand on the whole thing of, was it right to loan her and was it not?
I think to answer it in short, yes, I would say it's right to loan her. I think the difficulty is now everyone, like you said before, has realised her talent. We cannot afford, and this is with any young player, not just Grace, we cannot afford to have talent like that sitting on the bench and getting 5-10 minutes here and there, the odd Conti Cup appearance every month or however that works out in terms of group stages. I think it's, I mentioned it slightly earlier about important for development. And, she did go out to Bristol. She played well. She scored quite a few goals there as well. I think Spurs is just another level, like without being horrible, sort of Bristol are, fighting for survival. Spurs are sort of pushing for mid-table to sort of the higher reaches, sort of 4th, 5th. And I think it's, again, just getting out there and showing what you can do. Not that she needs to prove anything, but I think it will just maybe even prove a point to Skinner or, whoever we have in charge next season if they make a change. That, this is me, I'm here, this is what I can do. And I do deserve to be given a chance, whether, that's starting weekly or, playing a bit of a better role than she has previously for United, which has been pretty much nothing. I do believe that loans, and I'm a big fan of loans, I do believe that they're good for development. For me, it's how you come back from that loan. So what happens then? I mean, we've seen it in the past. If we take Carrie Jones, for example, loaned out, has now left the club. We need to decide as a club sort of what model we're adapting, but I do think that loans are very beneficial.
I was going to say, now you said that, I'm trying to think of a loan player that we've had, that we've loaned out and has then come back into the squad. Because I was thinking Fuso, she went out on loan, then we got rid of her. Obviously, you mentioned Carrie Jones, she went out on loan, we got rid of her. I genuinely can't think of a player we've loaned out that has then come back.
I think that's the difficulty. Skinner talks about sending players out on loan to get them some minutes and some experience, and then they take those minutes and those experience elsewhere, and it's just like, well, what's the point? Like we're always talking about sort of the congestion in the fixture calendar and stuff. Like we do have the games to give players minutes if we really want to. It's just it feels like he's not willing to kind of rotate sometimes.
So do you think it was right, Keris, to loan her out this season, or do you think you would have maybe kept her around and rotated her in that squad?
To be fair, I saw someone making the point in the comments section, and they are right, to be fair, that we'd be looking at it very differently if we still had an uninjured midfield with like Hinata Miyazawa and all those sorts of players. We probably wouldn't be like staring off at like Grace Clinton looking quite so misty-eyed, because we'd have a bit more depth in that midfield. So I can understand the decision to loan her. The difficulty then, like I've got no issue with loaning players out to get minutes and experience, as long as we then actually bring them back in to use those minutes and experience. That's kind of the problem. So hopefully, if we can bring her back successfully, then I think it will have been a good decision. If not, then not sure what we've gained from it, really.
No, I tend to agree. Amari, you made the point. I'm going to talk about this in a second, because that's my thing here when we're talking about this. I don't know. Something's going to have to give somewhere, and I'll come on to that in a second. It's a real tough one, because I've been taught. Obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing, because she might have gone to Spurs on loan and maybe hadn't hit the heights that we're now seeing, and we'd have sat there going, actually, it's a good loan. She's got some minutes in her, but because of what we've now seen, and because of I think I saw something earlier, she's only second behind Jace in terms of take-ons and progressive carries, all these kinds of things. Everything that we've been saying our midfield has not been doing this season. I think if we'd have had her there, obviously our season wouldn't have been completely transformed. I'm not saying we'd have been pushing for the title, but maybe we would have seen a couple of better results had we had somebody in the midfield like that. But it comes back to the question of, would Skinner have even played her anyway? Because I'm not so sure that she would have played regardless of if she was here. That kind of leads me into the point of where she would potentially fit in, because you mentioned a couple of them there. So we've got obviously Tooney, that I'm probably going to miss players off it because there's so many. We've got Tooney there. Obviously, Lads has recently extended, so she's not going anywhere. Zell is out of contract this summer. We've also got Miyazawa, as you mentioned, Guerrero, Lisa Nalsund, potentially Grace Clinton to come back into this mix. We're talking 3 positions here. Now, I think someone asked the question a second ago where she's been playing for Spurs. She's been playing further forward, so kind of in the Tooney position, you would say. Although I think I'll come to that as a separate question, actually. But Matt, do you think this is going to be the big thing here, that if she is going to come back and play a role in next season, one or two of our midfielders, has probably got to go out, because we'll have potentially 7 or 8 midfielders. And if you believe the rumours as well, I think they are true, that we will go and buy another midfielder this summer. Emma Watson's another one that I completely forgot as well, that's going to be coming back from her ACL injury as well. We've potentially got 7, 8, 9 midfielders. So do you think it's a case of if she stays, 1 or 2 have got to move out?
I think so, yeah. I was just actually going to touch on Watson. That was literally coming in the private chat, and then you mentioned it. But I think, yeah, when you look at it like that and you look at sort of that middle section of the midfield, I think it is difficult. We've always talked about, even since day one, competition for places and that quality. But then you've got to balance that with sort of what do you want from your midfield in terms of the way you play, in terms of, like, say, people coming back from injury. How do we fit them all in there? At present, we've got there's a lot of people chat about sort of Zellum in the defensive position. Can she play higher up? Can Ladd hold? Do you then want, like you said before, do you want 2 ball carriers? Is it going to be too exposed if Tooney plays alongside Clinton, because they're both attacking players? And I suppose there's loads of questions. And then, like you say as well, summer recruitment as well, potentially. Again, I think it is a difficult one. I mean, who'd be a manager? But I just think, we've got to decide. We've talked about sort of loans and then going elsewhere and then being sold. I think somebody put a comment further up about cutting a loan short. We did that with Amy Palmer in season 1 and then never played her from January onwards. So that was a waste. So I think whoever's calling the shots in terms of, I mean, obviously we know Skinner is, but in terms of like who's looking behind him, sort of the team off the pitch. We talked about Polly the other day. Like, what is the plan? What do we want from it? What does the manager want for it? But yeah, I think for me, we can't carry that many players into summer and bring back Grace and then be like, right, what we're going to do? Because it's going to be too much. There's going to be a lot of unhappy players otherwise.
No, I think that's the thing. It's going to be really difficult. Dave's obviously asking how long Lisa. I'm pretty sure she's 2026. I think she was one of the longer contract. I remember when we gave it to her, it was that's a long contract for women's football. I'm sure it was 4 years at the time we got her. I think it's 2026. Don't quote me on that one though. So if that's the case, for her to move already, over a year on, this summer, I don't think it's against the realms possibility. I think there's a potential that she could move, but yeah, I'm not sure. I just don't think anyone out of that midfield. It's going to depend on managers and things like that. But Matt, you mentioned it there in terms of who's potentially calling the shots. We spoke about this last week. Obviously, Polly Bancroft is leaving at the end of the season. Is she going to be dealing with this until the end of the season now? Obviously, we haven't got the replacement in for her yet. So it's like, that worries me, that it's going to be someone who's leaving is dealing with a player that's going to have so much interest in the summer. And then, like you said, you're going to have unhappy players. We're probably going to be looking at another midfield. I don't know why, because it's not a position that we need. But if we just seem to sign midfielders every season, I'm not too sure. Obviously, this comment talking about Grace walking 20 team. Obviously, talking about Skinner though. I'll come back to the comments about Skinner actually. Sport is point talking about Letitia, Clinton, Watson, and Tooney needs to be built around. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. But that's your midfield right there. That's your 3 midfield. They can't all. Well, I wouldn't play that as a midfield 3. That's a bit too attacking, I think, on that one. But yeah, I mean, Karis, I guess the same question to you in terms of where would she fit in? With all those players mentioned, do you think it is going to have to be a case of, if she's staying, for next season, then her contract is up. But if she is staying for the long term, that we're going to have to move some players out in order to fit her in. Because surely she can't have this amazing loan, and then we're like, yeah, we're bringing you back for next season, and she just sits on the bench.
That's the problem, because if we do that, she will just leave, and I can't blame her at all. Because she knows she can go, maybe not any other club, but most of the other clubs in the WSL and be a starting player every single week. So if unless she's promised minutes, she got no reason to come back. But then we reach the situation, it's almost, we're spoiled for choice in terms of attacking midfielders, but a lot of people have raised in the comments, like, we need sort of a proper defensive midfielder. People have been talking about playing Narsund in that role. Hayley Ladd obviously can play that role to an extent, but we need sort of a full-throated number 6 almost. So I think it's a really difficult one. I can't see Toon going anywhere. I can't see Zellum going anywhere. Emma Watson, obviously coming back from her ACL injury, is really promising as well. We've got Miyazawa coming back. We've got Narsund, who's been really impressive lately. So it's really difficult. I really don't know where she would fit in. And if we had more games, then it would be a possibility for rotation. But again, there's an argument of Skinner wouldn't rotate anyway. So it's a really difficult one. Like, I think we'd be massively kicking ourselves if we let her go this summer, but it's also very difficult to see where she fits in at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of around this conversation, Matt, there's a few people in the chat saying, I think this, I don't know whether that's to me or to someone else in the comments talking about, what do you mean we don't need a midfielder, we need a 6. But if that's the case, obviously Ladd has just extended, and I think we'd all agree she's probably our most defensive midfielder that we've got out of the options that we've just mentioned. But again, does it not just raise the point of, to me, it just seems like a lack of forward planning, and we're just buying all these players, just going, oh, well, we've got a few youngsters on the books, and then potentially we can sell them at a profit, because that's what it would be. If she goes this summer, it'll be a profit on what we got her for. I don't know. I'm just worried that we're just buying players, midfielders. It seemed like we got Guerrero in because we wanted to shove Vilda out. Like, it just seemed like that was just what was happening. Lisa, has been in and out of the side. And 1 minute Mark's going to saying, the only thing standing in the way is her, and then she starts the next 3. It's like, what's going on there? Obviously, Watson we've not seen yet in the league. Obviously this season because of the injury at the start. So I just question more and more what we're doing long term, because you look at other positions on the pitch and we're like, we've got nobody. Yet we look at midfield and we're like, we've got everybody. It's a bit of a catch-22 there. I guess talking about obviously her positioning and things like that, and TJ asked this a while ago, would Grace slot in next to Tooney and Zell? I guess the question is, we saw it last week for England. I don't know whether we saw it tonight. Again, like I said, I didn't watch the game. Can Tooney and Clinton play together, do we think, if we had a real solid number 6 behind? Or do you think they're too similar in their, I guess, style or positions and things like that? Matt, obviously, I know you've watched Tooney for a long, long time. So do you think those two can play together? Or do you think it's a case of they're going to be competing for the same spot? What do you think on that one?
Yeah, I think I would say competing for the same spot. I think they are quite similar for me anyway, from what I've seen of obviously Clinton and Tooney since she was a kid. I think it's difficult because, again, we mentioned, and I know people have mentioned it into the comments, you don't want the midfield where it's too attacking. Obviously, I know people mentioning Ladd behind and then Tooney and Grace. But I think for me, like, personally, I'd like my midfielders to be slightly different. So, Tooney's obviously a ball carrier, good at dribbling, late runs into the box, gets the goals, gets the assists. I think for me, obviously, you've got Ladd doing the sort of the dirty work, the tackling, the passing. I just want something a little bit different next to Tooney. I think, getting that balance. I know sort of last year when she did get game time, I liked Vilda Borisa. I think when Vilda Borisa had been in there, it offered something different. And I think just mixing it up, there's so many people talk about rotation and, playing different players. But I think that, that comes with adapting. And I hate saying it, but Chelsea adapt pretty well when they rotate. They got rid of somebody as quality as Jessie Fleming, but yet they've still got other options where the midfielders are slightly different and offer something different. And I think there's times, even games this season, when we've lacked something that's been missing, and we're thinking, well, actually, right, who can bring what and what's different? And I think the danger for me is if you're starting 2 players that are similar in your midfield, I think that can be, difficult in terms of for the teams that sit in. Who's going to get them passes to unlock defences? Tooney's going to be in the end of them, or Grace on the end of them passes. Who's sort of doing that job as well? It's just about balance to me, and I think playing Tooney. Listen, I'm not against Tooney and Grace playing together, but I just, on the balance of it, I don't really think it would be possible to sort of work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this is, I guess, Kara's same question you started, because this is a debate I've been kind of thinking into my head. Like, I don't know. I'm sure they can. I'm sure they'd find a way. Obviously, you'd have your traditional 6, 8, 10. I'll use Bayern Munich as an example. I think next season you're going to see this with Oberdorf, Stanway, and Pernilla Harder. That's your 6, 8, 10 right there. Whether United would adopt a similar kind of model with the lads, but then, like we said, obviously Zellum is the captain. She doesn't seem to get rotated in that either. So that's 2 of your midfield's gone already. So then you would argue, well, it's Clinton versus Toon then. But, people want them to see them play together. So, Keris, where do you stand on this? Do you think they can play together? And if they do, where does that leave the rest of the midfielders in terms of who plays in behind them?
That's the thing. Like, for me, it's not so much a question of can Tooney and Clinton play together, because obviously we've not seen much of it at all. But from briefly what we have seen for England over the last few days, to me, it's looked really good. I know they are quite similar players in terms of both being sort of very attacking minded, but people have pointed out in the comments section, you've literally highlighted the one I was about to quote there. But there are differences between them. Having Clinton in sort of the 8 and Tooney in the 10, I think could work. But then the question for me is more like, where does that then leave everyone else? And I wouldn't be as worried about that if we actually rotated our squad, but we don't. So that's the problem for me. Is I think at the moment we're so spoilt for choice in those attacking midfield positions that it completely depends, I think, on what happens with the position of the manager and whether we bring in someone who is actually willing to rotate and manage players' minutes better. And then I think it could work having Clinton back in there, having her play alongside Tooney. I don't think is necessarily a no-go, but I think there's then the issue of, obviously, you raise like Zellum, Hinney, I mean, God knows who else. Like, we've got so many players who will all be demanding minutes.
I would love to be one of the players, if they're ever watching this, just going, Keris goes through the midfield, and we're one of the others. I think you just thought, just one of them.
It's been a long day, like. Yeah, if anyone's watching, then sorry, guys.
There is a lot of them, to be fair. You mentioned Skinner. I'll move obviously onto that in a second in terms of what obviously that means for Grace and potentially other contracts as well. But Haile makes a point here. Zell is the most likely to leave or most likely to go, given she's out of contract. I don't think that's as far a stretch as people might think. I think everyone's expecting her because she's captain. She's nailed on to sign and everything else. I wouldn't be as sure, I think, on that one. I just, I don't know. That's not, I don't know anything or anything else. I don't know. I can see that potentially happening this summer with just the amount of midfielders we've got on long contracts and youngsters coming through and potentially different management as well. So we may as well move on to that, Matt. Obviously, this comment was a while ago now. Only way Grace stays if we get new management. I brought this comment up a second ago. Grace should walk into any team. Skinner insists on the same 11 or the same face each week. So Grace may well leave. Do you think that's maybe is the case, that Grace is potentially looking at this? Because I think I might have put some on Twitter the other week. That Grace is being tapped up on international duty right now by probably players at Arsenal. I'm sure Beth Mead's in her ear, and these kinds of things, and potentially some of the Chelsea girls as well are just like, it's good over here, and everything else. Whereas I don't know whether the United girls can be saying that about Mark Skinner, as harsh as that might sound. So do you think that maybe is the case, that for her, she's potentially looking at it going, well, I'll wait and see, because she's not out of contract this summer. There's no immediate rush for her in terms of leaving on a free, but she's the coach at Spurs really rates her, obviously really likes her as well. He's spoken about it numerous times. Do you think that's going to have a key role to play in this, in terms of what happens with Mark as well?
I think so, yeah. And also, as we talked about sort of slightly earlier in Sunday, off the pitch as well, I think Grace is obviously in a better position, because she can sort of say, well, actually, what's happening off the field, who's coming in with the behind-the-scenes structure, what manager, if Skinner goes, is coming in, and where do I fit into these plans? And, we've mentioned it, if she doesn't like it, she'll be off. And I think it's interesting. I do feel like people have said, and I fully agree, a new manager rotating, giving people chances is the way forward again. If you look at the clubs that have been successful and won things over the last few years, like of the City, well, maybe not them, but the Arsenals and the Chelseas anyway, they do rotate. And I think it's a big criticism that's sort of aimed at Skinner, isn't it? About people say about favourites, and it was similar to Birmingham, and people that are sort of out of form don't get dropped because they're potentially viewed as a favourite. And it's always interesting, because I've said this a lot. Like, you can't always play the same players in the same formation against certain opposition. There has to be things that change. You have to rotate. You look at sort of the Chelsea with the number of players they've got in their squad, and they manage to compete in Europe yearly. for all 4 trophies, yearly. And I think that's the success of them. And I think, the benchmark for that, if we want to aim for that ourselves, is rotation, is giving people chances. And just mixing it up. But I think definitely in terms of Grace, just to sort of finish off there, I think she's in a strong position. If I was her, I would be waiting to see what happens. And then obviously, like I say, it's difficult because we've still got a manager in place. But if it's a new manager, my first conversation would be, where do I fit into your plans, or do I fit into your plans? And then sort of take it from there, really. But yeah, interesting. I'm just reading the comments now and people talking about sort of, Hansen and Jess Park. But yeah.
I was going to say, I completely forgot about Hansen when we were talking about loans earlier, because obviously I forgot what she went on loan as well. Another loanee that we loaned out, and then she moved on as well. And that one was actually, I think, the toughest to take. So it was like we saw how good she was with Villa. Now, would she have done any worse this season than our current wingers? I think she would have been better than the wingers we've had, this season, particularly off the left. I don't think Galton has particularly hit the heights that we've seen in recent years. So, it's a shame when we're seeing quite a few players now leave and do better once they've left as well. So I think, just on Mark, I think if you've got a style there and you've got a way of playing and you've got a squad that's happy, I think it doesn't matter who you bring in, because they've bought into the system and they can just not walk into the team, but you can rotate without any issues. And I think, I hate bringing them up. I can't believe I'm about to do this, but you only have to look at Liverpool men's side of the weekend, how many changes they had, how many kids came in. Doesn't matter. They've got a clear way of playing, they all buy into it, and it works. Whereas I think with us, I don't think that's the case. I think that's been one of our biggest issues. Kara, so to yourself, do you think this, again, like I said, there's a lot of people pretty much, I don't think I've seen one single comment disagreeing with it yet, but pretty much everyone is saying pretty much that. Do you think that is the case? If you're Grace looking at it going, if Mark is to be offered, we don't know what conversations are going on right now. There'll be a lot. Do you think that it's as simple as that if he gets a new contract, Grace is gone?
It's not necessarily that black and white. I think it'll still be a decision for her either way. But she's spoken a lot during her time at Spurs about how much she's kind of relished the opportunity to be creative and to play the way she wants to play. And that felt, a lot of people kind of labelled it as a dig at Skinner, which it wasn't necessarily deliberately, but it speaks volumes about how she felt she didn't fit into his plans at the club, potentially, in my opinion. So I think it either, even if he renews his contract, there needs to be some kind of discussion about an honest discussion about what he actually sees her role as being in the team, because none of these players are thick and they'll all know the exact same things as we do, and we've been talking about the competition in the midfield, and Grace got no real reason to stay if she's going to be sat on the bench. I think that's the simple thing, but that isn't necessarily solved by Skinner going out. It would have to be another manager coming in, giving her reassurances that she could get minutes. Otherwise, it could be a new face, but the same problems for her.
No, for sure. And I don't think the interview's out there yet, so I don't know whether I'm allowed to say this or not. But I think that there is an interview coming with the Spurs manager, and he mentions in that, talking about Grace and so on, how big of a part she is to the team and wanting her, and so I fully expect Spurs to be trying at the very, rightfully so, spend the money. I don't want to put a price tag on her, but if I'm United, I'm going no. Like, especially if Mark is to be going as well, I would want, I don't know, I don't want to put a price on, I don't think, but I would want 300 plus, not going to lie, just to try and keep her. And would we take the risk losing her on a free? I'm not too sure, but I would want a considerable amount of money if we are to move her on, because for me, she's earned it. It's not like a player that's just come out of nowhere. We bought her for a reason. From Everton, we learned her out. She was brilliant with Bristol, and everyone was like, she needs proper WSL experience, even though she'd already had it with Everton. And we've seen it again now with Spurs. For me, her ceiling is ridiculously high. So if we don't find a way of getting her into that team next season, for me, it would just be another. I don't know. I don't want to put all the pressure on just Grace, but I feel like this one to me, will signify what kind of team we are, because we've let a lot of players go that are young, that we've helped develop. Obviously, Honor was always going to go back to Bar. So I'm looking at these types of players. We've developed them or loaned them out, and then they just go when they start hitting, kind of their peak and start getting better. I don't want us to be a stepping stone. I want players like Grace to look at us and go, "Nah, that's the team I want to be at, to push in, push the league and push far in the cups and things like that." I don't want us to be just that club that everyone starts at and then not builds on to somebody else. Yeah, I think they will. I think United are going to have a lot of bids this summer for her, not just from Spurs. I think there'll be other clubs that will be looking around her. I forgot to start a question, but I can't find it now. I wish I'd have started it. I can't find it, but I remember what it said anyway. It was something about if we get knocked out the FA Cup, is Mark going to get sacked there, or will it wait until the summer? I can't find the comment though. Someone definitely asked it. I'm not just making it up. But very quickly on that one, while we're on the topic of Skip, do you think? I know, Matt, you were on the show actually Thursday when you spoke about this, but do you think that maybe is the case? Because that essentially is what we're fighting for now. It's the FA Cup that if we don't win that he goes there and then, or can you just see him just waiting to the end of the season regardless of what happens now?
Yeah, I think it's something I obviously spoke about briefly with Barry, and then we spoke about it sort of in our WhatsApp group. I think it's difficult if you are going to get knocked out of the FA Cup and you're going to finish fourth or lower again. I think it's very difficult from his point of view to argue your case for another year. And I talked about, sort of said the other day, it feels like this year we've gone backwards. Like, I don't know what it is. It just feels like, whether it's the games we've played, the teams we've lost to, the manner of which we've lost the game. I think Barry talked about the disappointment of the Arsenal game. Players and staff potentially not being clear on what was expected of the way we play or what the game plan was. I think it's just overall, yeah, from a manager's point of view, I don't feel like he should continue for me. It's one of them. I think the change, and I said this the other day, the change should come in the summer. I still don't believe, for me, that a trophy should change that. I think if the plan is to get rid, regardless, I still think we get rid. I think third is potentially out of reach. An FA Cup final is still possible. But again, are we just going to get, hammered by the likes of a Chelsea or somebody like that? I genuinely don't know. But I think, yeah, for me, it's something where we have to look for something fresh now, and build and hope that next season's a lot better than this.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think, because like you said, I think there's a real chance we get to the cup final, by the way, because I think, when we're looking at, obviously, at Brighton, I'm pretty sure, I think we'll get past Brighton. Then we could get a favourable draw in the next round and avoid Chelsea and City, and then we're in the final, obviously, provided we then win that one. So, which is what we did last year with 3 championship sides and Brighton and LSV. We managed to get to the final. And to be fair, we actually did all right in the final, but it kind of just summed up the season, just so close, yes, so far on that one, and ended up with nothing. I did find the original comment. It was yourself, Kevin. So someone said it was TJ. And see, poor Kevin, he didn't get his question in, but I did find it in the end. Dana obviously talking about why are we selling. That's exactly my point. I don't want us to be that. At the moment, I feel like that's what some players are looking at. As, if I go there, play well for a couple of years, I can move on to a bigger, with a bigger move and so on. I don't want us to be that anymore. Keris, just yourself on that question. In terms of, do you think it matters, what happens between now and the end of the season? Do you think, Mark will just go regardless? Do you think he's going to be offered a new deal? How can you kind of see it playing out from his contract's point of view?
In my personal opinion, the only situation in which I would really want to see him having a new contract offered is if I saw serious evidence of, it sounds really obvious, right? But serious evidence of some actual progress, such as us winning the FA Cup, or us really, even if we were to make Champions League, but even then, those things at this point seem like they would be more down to other clubs slipping up than our kind of good fortune. I feel like this season we've taken a big step back. I think the thing that could potentially save his job would be the FA Cup, getting that first bit of silverware. But in my personal opinion, I don't think it should. At the end of the day, a cup run is the beauty of a cup is that kind of, obviously to a far lesser extent in the women's game than the men's game, you don't tend to get as many upsets. But the beauty of a cup run is it's just a series, or it can be won on a series of luck or a series of chances. I mean, even last season, making it to the final, we got to the final through an 89th minute winner, right? And we were just short in the final. Like, I think that even if we were to win the FA Cup, I don't think that his contract should be renewed. Unfortunately, because I'm not usually someone to kind of call for a manager's head. But I've run out of patience with the kind of lack of progress recently, and more so than the results is just the lack of ideas. I think I don't feel like we've got a clear sort of direction for where we're going under Skinner at the moment. That was my kind of 2 pence.
No, I tend to agree. I think, my various other, I think I put this in the live chat on Thursday, the show that Matt, Barry, Vic and Andrew did, that, after the City Conte game, it was pretty much, I'd made my mind up hearing some other things as well. It just kind of cemented that. And then the Arsenal away defeat was just the final. I'd said that at half time. I'd gone into the concourse. Well, I met you, Keris, obviously at half time in the concourse. It was very much just like, yeah.
That was one of the most miserable conversations I've ever had in my life. Met Barry for the first time. It was like, you're right. No, me neither. Like, it was not fun.
Yeah, that wasn't fun. Especially because on the replay, on the TVs that they have at the Emirates, are just showing the goals over and over and over. It's like, just leave us alone. So that wasn't fun. But no, yeah, and to be fair, yeah, you make a good point. Obviously, yeah, that weekend was just a bit of a blur. I don't actually remember much of that because it was 2 days after the FCA's night for us, so it was like we were still on such a high from the awards night that Old Trafford was just a secondary thing. However, I do remember leaving there very angry. So yeah, I mean, some people would say, yeah, obviously you talk about last season, it was the fighting to the end, and the amount of late goals we had last season. Villa, and just mentioned the Brighton one there against Reading, against Arsenal. We had loads of late winners like that. Man City as well. So, but that seems to have gone this season, and for whatever reason, I don't know what's gone so massively wrong. But as Matt said, we've just massively regressed this season. For me, with better players as well, which yeah, not quite sure how on that one. Yeah, I don't think it's a case of having die-hard defenders. I mean, there's definitely a few out there. I've always said it's results driven. I'll never outright call for a manager to be sacked. It is what it is. But I just don't think they should renew his contract. If we get knocked out by Brighton, I might be saying let's just let him go and see out the rest of the season. But I don't know. I think we've reached that point now, and I fully believe that there's players' contracts hinging on this and waiting on, rightfully so, waiting on seeing what happens. This is always an interesting question to do you have any replacements? I mean, I don't know whether you two do. Off the top of my, because I was speaking to somebody about this yesterday. The problem is, I mean, not that you can't go and get them, but there's not many managers that are available in terms of outer jobs. That's not to say we can't go and poach somebody from another club. I don't know. I don't know whether you two have either got a name, but Mel Phillips was mentioned in the chat earlier on. Somebody then came back saying that's not much of an upgrade on Mark Skinner.
Yeah,
I would say it is.
I was going to say Mel Phillips is the only one that really springs to mind.
That's what I mean. It's really tough, isn't it? Unless we go completely left field and just go for.
Sorry, I was good.
Fine.
Sorry, Connor. I think I'm on a lag or you're on a lag. The Wi-Fi's awful. But yeah, I was going to say like Mel Phillips is the name that obviously springs to mind because she's been recently sacked, and she's clearly got kind of an appetite for, I've said I think Brighton were really, really rushed in making the decision to sack her, and I think it was a wrong decision. She's clearly got an appetite for like a big rebuild project. She's clearly got the kind of, she can visualize a project and sort of progress and bring players in and really motivate people to join and motivate people to get behind that like vision. But also, you know, she could be completely uninterested in staying in the WSL. She could be wanting to go back to the States. I'm not as aware on as some others on like what managers are available internationally. So that's why I'm always usually very reluctant to call for a change of management, because it's like, well, who do we change it to? But it's kind of getting to that point now where you're just running out of patience with Mark Skinner.
I mean that's not a bad shout actually. Yeah, but obviously I'm out of a job, I believe now since leaving Morocco. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, there's obviously previously at Lyon as well. Do you know what? Me and Charlie were talking about this a few weeks. So I would love Ollie. However, the only reason I wouldn't, and this might be a stupid reason, I feel like it would attract fans to the games that are not there to support the team. They're just there to try and meet Ollie or to support Ollie and so on. I feel like it would take away from the players. You know, obviously that comes with whatever, but I would love Ollie because I loved him at United. For me, my favourite United men's manager we've had, but I do worry a little bit on that one. Two good shouts there as well. Obviously, I can't remember the Paris FC's manager's name, but the way they've got them playing, I wouldn't be totally against that either. That would be I was actually saying to someone again when I was talking to somebody about managers yesterday. That was another name that came obviously at Spurs, but again I can't see that one. And there was also that
difficulty we've got as well is, as bad as this is going to sound, we are competing with Chelsea, who are looking for a new manager. Now, if you weigh up the two clubs and you look at what you've got to spend, who's better run, as much as I love United, you're not coming out if you've got an option between United and Chelsea. What's the more attractive club to join? So, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Anton, in regards to your question, I cannot see Martin coming back here anytime soon.
It's a new deal anyway.
Yeah, he's literally just signed one. So, I mean, we could buy him out of it. It would be ridiculous, I think, to sign the deal. All of a sudden, we buy him out of it. But I can't. Maybe in the future, but I couldn't see that just yet. I think if we're going to get a new manager, we're going down a different road because it's going to, obviously, Casey's recently new signed as well, so she's not coming back. So it is going to be someone new on that one. There was another comment I just wanted to quickly mention. I did not say that. What I meant to say was post Sir Alex. He was my favourite manager. Although likability-wise, Ollie was. I just loved under Ollie. It was the football was good. It was just such a good time around the club, and then we started losing loads of games. And it was awful. But yeah, I agree with Matt's point, and it's not just obviously talking about Chelsea. Have Barca got their new manager sorted yet, or are they going to be in the market as well? I'm pretty. Or have they got someone?
I don't think they've got anyone lined up. So we're competing with Barca and Chelsea.
So that's what I mean.
It's not much of a choice, is it?
So if we're having those conversations with people now, and I know people are saying Chelsea have got theirs sorted, it looks likely it's going to be that. But if not, if that falls through, Chelsea are going to be in the market, Barca, potentially us. Gareth Taylor, I'm pretty sure, isn't he? Is he out of contract as well at City, or has he got a year left? He's definitely coming up to the end of his. It's either this year or next year. So City potentially, will be looking as well. Obviously, he might win the WSL anyway and end up getting a new one. So they're in a bit of a different position to us. Oh dear, can you imagine? I don't know if I'd be against it, but I think there'll be a lot of fans unhappy with that one, I think. Yeah. I'm assuming that's in regards to Barca. Yeah, it is. Yeah, talking about Barca. So, okay, so maybe not. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure he's out of contract this summer as well. But like you said, they could go win the league and the FA Cup. So, a little bit different situation to us on that one. So, I don't know. We'll see, obviously, when we get close to the time in terms of what names potentially prop up. But, yeah, I think we're all kind of in agreement that it's probably time for a change now when we get to the summer on that one. A few other players then that are out of contract. Obviously, we've not we speak about her every single week, and I kind of want to phrase this question differently to how we usually ask regarding Mary Earps. And now, I guess the question is: the closer we're getting to the summer, do we think it's more likely now that she potentially will stay? And also the domino effect of the fact that there's not actually that many clubs out there now that need a goalkeeper. Obviously, Ellie Roebuck is very, very likely going to go to Barcelona this summer. So that's Barca off the table. Chelsea don't need keepers. Arsenal, Zinsberg has just recently extended, so they've obviously clearly got faith in her. They might go back in for her, they might not sit. She's not going to City. So it's only really Arsenal from WSL. You look at France, it's not going to be Lyon. She's definitely not going Germany. So it's America, Arsenal, or PSG for me are the only areas I could see her going. Or Real Madrid, potentially, but I just don't see that either. But whatever. But Matt, do you think there is a stronger chance now that we see her stay? But also, are you a little bit worried that the fact that she might only stay now because no one else is going for her, and it's a case of her options have run out, so she's gone, oh, well, I'll just stay at United? Or do you think there is a genuine part of her that actually thinks, oh, well, maybe this is the better thing for my career? And also, I guess the follow-up question to that, because I think someone just mentioned it, what does that mean for Fallon if she does end up staying?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one. Listen, I've been a massive fan of Mary since even before she joined United, to be fair. But, back to when she was getting absolutely hammered by the fan base when she first signed and sort of the first season. But I think I was quite annoyed by her antics and the way she sort of behaved with all that speculation. I don't think that did her any favours within the fan base. And there's a lot of comments sort of hating on that. It's a difficult one because, obviously we don't know fully what goes on with sort of agents and behind the scenes, but it does feel like it's all quieting down. She's potentially run out of offers. And I know you've just gone through quite a few teams there, Does she take a gamble and move? Would it work out? I know some people saying in comments, Arsenal may recruit, they may not. Would it work out there for her? Potentially. I don't think her form has been as good as last year. That's obviously the club as a whole, not just the goalkeeper. Does she gamble abroad? It didn't really work at Wolfsburg. She was second choice. You then talk about Fallon. Where does she fit in? She's obviously come in being, I'm assuming, promised to fight for the number one spot. She's not really been given that opportunity to do so. And like you say, obviously Chelsea don't need goalkeepers. City are sorted, Kiara Keating's coming through. Again, where does she go at? I do think she'll probably use it to her advantage to negotiate a new deal. I can see this, the sort of, I've got all these offers, I can go here, I can go there, I can do this, with all these individual awards that she keeps winning. I think, she's well sort of on the upper hand in terms of negotiating what she wants, whether the club, as we've seen previously, go to that extent in terms of demands. We've seen it where they've walked away or negotiations have collapsed. I think it's a difficult one, but I think for me, we kind of got to figure it out, and we should really, for me, have made an earlier or be making early decisions now on that. Because for me now, if you've got Fallon as your number one next year and Mary does go, Fallon probably for me needs to be playing games or more games now this year to bed in rather than keeping somebody that's not going to be around next season. So it's going to be interesting. We've had it in the past with sort of younger keepers, haven't we, where we've had the likes of, Bentley and Rambo, and it's a little bit different in that Fallon's very experienced, a very good keeper, slightly different in terms of what she offers than Mary. Again, a physical presence, quite tall as well. So it's going to be interesting, the goalkeeping situation for me, but I wouldn't want to be keeping somebody that, one, doesn't want to be there or wants to use us just for a pay increase. That's football anyway, but do you know what I mean? Somebody whose heart's not in it. And two, that's not going to be here next year, but that will be playing games, for me, is also going to be an issue.
Yeah, there's so many factors to marry up when it comes to Mary. Because as we said, obviously this, there was a lot of reported interest last summer, but it seemed to have died off, throughout January. And actually the opposite happened where, people were coming out and saying, yeah, we're not actually interested. Don't link us again kind of thing. And it was, Keris, what can you see happening in regards to Mary? Because, for me, she seems a lot, I guess obviously it's calmed down. Her only option now is to leave on a free or she signs a new deal. I don't know what I know. The reason I guess I asked this question now, again, obviously we are talking about contracts, but I put a video out on the All for United TikTok and Twitter account, Mary after the Arsenal defeat. where she was the last player to go in. She was clapping us all off and like clapping the fans and looked obviously the most distraught. And the amount of not abuse, but like the amount of stick she got for that. And the reason I asked this question is because I don't think United fans have fully forgiven her for what we've seen, last summer with obviously flirting with Arsenal, I call it that. So do you think that is the case of, do you think she wants to stay? Obviously, we're not inside her head, we don't know. But like, what do you think is the thinking from her point of view? And would you want to stay, with that kind of thing going on?
I think that's the thing that no one really talks about, is that she has not. There's a lot of people who really, loved kind of that. There's a lot of people who absolutely loved Mary Earps, me being one of them, and I still don't. I'm not anywhere near as hurt by kind of recent events with her, like considering offers from other clubs or anything like that. I've not been anywhere near as kind of upset by that as some people were. But I think a lot of the fan base have ruined their relationship with her. And I think that's a real shame. For one, I think it's something that we still have in women's football to an extent, where we expect a much we treat players like they're our best friends rather than professionals. And if they get a better offer, then no. If they get a better offer, then yeah, they are going to go elsewhere. Sorry about that.
Was that Mary Earps' agent coming and asking you if she's leaving or
no,
not?
it was my boyfriend's housemates. Yeah, no. No, I was saying, I think that from Earps' point of view, I wouldn't necessarily be anywhere as keen on staying at this point. But it's just a massive kind of it's a massive act of stupidity and self-harm from us to have got to the point where now she's going to be leaving on a free transfer, and she's also, we've got our number 2 keeper in Thomas Joyce, who's a quality keeper, hasn't really been able to get any minutes. So I wouldn't be opposed to having Fallon as our first choice keeper at all, but at this point we would have wanted to have more minutes for her if that was going to be the case. So yeah, I think the whole way that it has been handled has been really, really poor, which is something that we say a lot about basically all of our transfer dealings. But yeah.
No, and you'd like to think now Polly is out of the picture and a new structure is going to be put in place that things are going to improve. So I hear what you're saying, Amara, in terms of it's a massive deal. The problem is the interest just wasn't there in January. It was hyped up into something and it wasn't. Arsenal backed away long before January. PSG it was too expensive and Barca were just never interested. The interest just wasn't in there, for her. So her only chance to move was last summer. And Arsenal just backed away for various reasons. So I don't know. I think it'll be easier now she's free, but the problem is with free transfers. I think I was listening to Ben Foster talk about this from obviously from the men's side. But when you're talking about free transfers, people just assume it's free. It isn't, because then the agents start whacking on fees, and then the player will just go, hang on. So if I'm free, then you can up my wages then, because you're not paying a transfer fee. So what you're not paying in transfer fees, you can pay me in wages. So it's not necessarily free. There'll be a lot of signing on fees and bonuses and all kinds of things whacked into that people just don't obviously incorporate with free transfers, especially as someone as high profile as Mary, that when she goes, she is a brand in herself. Wherever she goes, she's going to take fans with her. And I think that's part of the reason, as bad as it sounds, United probably want to keep hold of her so much, because she is a big reason as to a lot of the fans, I think, turning up at LSV and games and so on. We've seen that in multiple games that we've been at this season. I guess kind of just to wrap this one up then, I'll come to I guess the contracts overall that we've got out this summer, because obviously now I guess there's hope around people that with INEOS, Jim Ratcliffe and so on, that this potential new structure, that contracts are going to be dealt with better. I know, Matt, we've spoken about this on previous shows, that we know that contracts were not dealt with properly. I can't remember whether I said it on here or on another podcast, that I will never name the player, but I know full well that we left a player hanging for pretty much a whole year and then went back 3 weeks before the end of the season and went, oh, do you want a new deal? And then they went, no, I'm going. So that's the kind of situation we were dealing with, in terms of contract negotiations. As far as I'm aware, we've still got a few out. So it's Nikita Paris, Lucia Garcia, Rachel Williams, obviously Mary, who we've just spoken about, and Katie Zellum, that are fully out this coming summer with no option to extend. obviously the only extension. Then following on in 2025, we've got Jade, obviously Riviere, Mary Letitia, Grace Clinton, who we've just spoken about, Millie Turner, and I think potentially Blundell and one other. I can't remember who it is though. Matt, are you confident that we're going to get these over the line? Is there anyone out of that list that are out of this summer that you'd maybe let go for a start? And also, are you confident in retaining the ones that you'd want to keep on board?
You might have to remind me who was out of contract. I keep Paris. If we can keep her, try and keep her. Who else have we got? Zell,
Williams, Garcia, and obviously Mary. That's fully out this summer with no contract, with no extension.
I think Rach Williams as well for the experience. So to answer that, Mary if possible, Rach Williams and Paris, I think would be my 3 for extending. Paris, as we all know, has had a massive upturn in form, playing with great confidence, very good player, somebody I've always rated, obviously pre-United as well. Mary, listen, I'm not against Mary. If she can recapture her form and her head's, like I said before, her head's genuinely in it, and she can recapture her form sort of last season, then for me, that would be a good addition. I just think as well, the dressing room, like people talk a lot about Rachel Williams and coming off the bench and having an impact. That's great on the pitch, but I think off the pitch as well, if we've got quite a lot of young players, you need that experienced head in there. And I know, Mark and other staff and other players have talked about what she brings sort of off the field. And I think that's massively important, so she's definitely got another year in her. But yeah, I think for me, that's where now the contract negotiations is a worry. I know you said, you're confident of getting them done. My answer's no. I just think the fact that, listen, she's never going to leave partway through, you wouldn't have thought, but Polly, leaving at the end of the season concerns me because she's not going to be as fussed. No, it does. She's not going to be as fussed now.
It wasn't your fault. I was laughing at that. Sorry.
That's fine. No, it's right. But yeah, I think obviously Polly leaving at the end of the season, is she going to be massively fussed about contracts for next year? I'm not saying she isn't going to do a job, but it's a worry that this is a common theme and we don't seem to tie things up all the way. We offer poor wages to players or we just take the mick. I think obviously we tied up Haley Ladd early. Leah Galton obviously signed a new deal as well. But it's like, somebody mentioned in the comments as well about Maya and getting her tied up. Are we confident and are the players confident in the vision for the club? It seems to be, again, this season sort of patched together. There's no clear structure or idea. There's no plan, or there doesn't feel any plan in place for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. What is the plan? What is the goal? What does the structure look like and where we're going? And I think we need players that are, 1, buying into that, and 2, that are going to take us to the next level. People have talked about, I think you mentioned it before, Connor, about this year being a better squad than last year, but underperformed worse than last year's squad. If we're looking to keep the likes of Mallard, for example, we've got to have a clear structure in place and we've got to go somewhere, So I think those are the ones I'd like to keep. Those are the ones where I think, yeah, this is quality. Let's potentially build around those players. And then the others, yeah, for me, we need to sort of upgrade and really, like I say, push on next year.
You've just reminded me, Mallard was the other player. I knew there was someone I was missing from this. It's obviously because it's a loan. She's obviously out of contract officially because, her loan ends. That was the player I was thinking of. I knew there was someone I was missing that was out this summer. It was her because I did a TikTok about it not so long ago and I could have sworn there was one more. Yes, so thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, as we said, obviously we don't know what's going on in Polly Rancott's head, but, I'm sure we've all been there. When you know that you're leaving a job, you're not going to give it everything because it doesn't matter. You're not going to be there in 2 months' time. It's not going to be your issue. Now, I'm not saying she's going to just throw the job and everything else, but judging off the last couple of years, how we've dealt with contracts, I'm worried that we're not going to get the players online that we need. But Keris, for yourself, out of that list, would you try and keep all of them? Would you let some of them go? What's your kind of thoughts on that? And again, are you confident under this new potential regime that we can see, some better negotiations when it comes to contracts? Because as Matt said, it's not just this summer. You're looking ahead to next year where we've got the likes of Grace, Jade Riviere, Mary Letitia, these kind of players that we're supposed to be trying to build the squad around are out of contract as well.
God, let's hope the negotiations are better. I can't really see how they could be much worse, to be honest. We haven't managed to retain much over the last few years. But I think in terms of just going down the list, Mary Earps, I'm genuinely... feels weird to say indifferent, but I don't mind if she stays or goes, if her staying is going to be the same atmosphere as it's been this year, where it feels like a matter of time until she leaves. Because I don't think that's a good situation for the management, for the players, or for the fans. So Mary Earps, if she wants to stay, brilliant. She's a world-class keeper. But also Fallon's a world-class keeper. So I'm genuinely, unpopular opinion, but I'm genuinely quite easy either way on that one. Rachel Williams, I think, is a fantastic player. I think she's such a valuable person to have in the squad. Like Matt was saying, she brings that experience. She brings that. She's like that cheat code that we just need in a game sometimes. Garcia as well, I think I think she sometimes looks a bit less polished than some other players, but I think her raw kind of energy and talent is something that, when it's used correctly, can be really valuable. She's so creative. She moves the ball so quickly. So I would like to hang on to her. Paris, I think, is actually. I think she will be very happy to stay. I think it's been made clear to her kind of how valuable she is to the club, and I don't think we should have an issue retaining her. Zellem's a really interesting one because she's obviously been a huge figure at the club, being our captain and being kind of basically undroppable. But also, I do wonder where she would go if she left. Like, I think there's almost two sides of it. Of, we wouldn't particularly want her to leave, but also I'm not sure she'd want to leave. I'm not sure where she would be. I'm not sure where she would be going, that she'd be guaranteed anywhere near as many minutes as she is now. So I'm interested to see how that one goes. Yeah, and then obviously Mallard on loan. Oh, sorry, I'm literally just going through this list in my head. Mallard on loan, I think, she's had moments of real class. And I think she's a brilliant player. She's our best sort of out and out 9. But the problem is that she hasn't been necessarily given the chance to show how she fits into the team on a permanent basis, I think. So it comes down to that as well. But yeah, I don't know. Matt, do you want to jump in on Mallard?
Yeah, just briefly, I think, we're talking about there about not giving too much of a chance. I think I'd agree in that aspect. And I'd also agree that under a different manager, she would probably thrive. Someone who I've seen, again, at Lyon, I know that's a talented team, but I think that the signs and the glimpses have been there. I know some people have said, she's sort of started off well and then faded, but I genuinely believe that's the way we play. I think if I remember rightly, she was farmed out on the right at one point. Then she was put central. I think it was Liverpool, I seem to remember, in the Conti Cup. She's sort of been in and out, couple of niggles, couple of injuries. And I think if we set up a better way, somebody like Jays or Paris supplying her from wide, and we actually play proper attacking football and not just sort of this backwards, sideways, hit and hope kind of thing, I do think she could thrive. So I think for me, if we can get that done, I know there's an option to buy in there with a proper manager. I think she could be a threat. Certainly one of the better forwards that we've had recently. Yeah, I just think it's a case of keeping her fit and playing to her strengths.
100%. I'll be trying to keep hold of Mallard. Obviously, there is a clause in the contract, so it's in our court. If we want to pay the fee, we will get her. And I think she's very I know she's very happy here and everything. She is an elite forward, in my opinion. I think if we can keep hold of somebody like her, I remember when it was spoken about and the rumours were starting. I think it was the day before deadline day that we were going after Mallard. Everyone I spoke to was like, yeah, you're not getting her on a perk. There's no way Lyon letting someone of that quality go on a perk. She's on a long deal. I'm pretty sure at Lyon she's down to 25. Well, obviously I know that's next year now. No, it might be 26. I said that like it's a long time away. I'm still living in 2020. No, but she's definitely still got a couple of years left. I'm sure she has. Because Lyon rated that highly and wanted to tie down to a long deal. So, yeah, I'd be trying to keep it. I'd be trying to keep all of them, I think, to a point, but only if they want to be here, and also if it doesn't upset the apple cart in terms of pushing the wage structure in directions that maybe other players are like, well, hang on a minute, if that player's earning that, then I should be earning X amount and so on, and just keep it consistent. Very quickly on Kuda's question, in terms of who was given the green light and signing midfielders last year with a group of people or individuals. So Mark has his lists, of players that he wants, and it's down to Polly and for the other people around to get those players. I don't need to believe it. I know it. The fact that they just wanted Vilda out for whatever reason, and Guerrero was available, so it was just a swap in that one. Watson was scouted after for 18 months. There was talk of us getting her the year prior. What are the midfielders to be signed in the summer? Miyazawa, I genuinely don't know. I honestly think this sounds really bad to say, doesn't it? I'm going to say it anyway. I genuinely think we only got Miyazawa because she was top scorer at the World Cup. I don't think we did that much scouting on her, not going to lie. I think it was just one of those. She did so well at the World Cup, and we thought, if she's going Liverpool, we can do something here. And we made the call and obviously got it. But I might be wrong. Don't take everything I say as gospel. That's just my opinion mixed in with some stuff that I know is true. So we'll see. I hear what you're saying, Jay, but like I said before, I think there's a strong chance that Mark isn't here next season. So, I think this sounds, again, a bit overboard for people, but I just think the whole club needs a bit of a restructure. Get the people above the manager sorted, and I'd also start looking at some other coaches as well and start really pushing the limits and start getting, real top-tier coaches, not academy-level coaches into the squad. Because that's essentially what we've got around the training pitch now is 2 academy coaches that are, learning to be, full-time, like first-team professional coaches under a manager that maybe not everybody likes as well. I don't think it's any coincidence that we've fallen off a little bit this season. Should we see? We'll be more confident, I'm sure. We'll get to the summer. We'll be sat here going, they're all going to sign and everything else. We shall see. But some very good points made in the chat as well. Mary Earps as well, because I think, Keris, as you just said, I think, what does that mean for Fallon? She's not going to sit on the bench for a year, is she? She came to us with the impression, I think, of becoming number 1. So if Mary stays, I wouldn't expect to see Fallon sticking around for another 2 years, 3 years or whatever, which would be a massive shame because I think Fallon deserves that shot at number 1. And Saf as well. She's doing well at Watford. That could well be another player that we were speaking about right at the start. That's about loaning that and then getting rid of. I think Saf might fall under that bracket sometime soon as well. Another player that we just loan out and then move on as we go on there. But we shall see. Right, we'll wrap it up there because we've got another show coming on Friday. So make sure you tune into that one Friday at 7:00. We discuss West Ham. Keris, anything you want to shout out while you're on here? Obviously, your Twitter out. You're back doing your podcast as well on that one.
Yeah, we had one episode back and then Angel got the flu. But we're recording again tomorrow. So it's the She's Out of Your League podcast on Spotify. We're on Twitter. It's SOOYL pod. Do give it a listen. You get to, if you want to, I wouldn't recommend listening to the last episode because it's with my mate Angel, who's an Arsenal fan. It was our preview of the Arsenal United game. And I haven't been able to face listening to it back yet. I was quite relieved she had the flu last week, if truth be told. So that'll be back on tomorrow. So hopefully we will be able to move on swiftly from that game.
Was there some singing involved? Did I see on Twitter that we were going back and forth? Or was that?
Yeah, no. Basically, I came back from London the same day of the game, back up to Sheffield where I live, and had a drink and went out with Angel, and then they played Freed from Desire in the club. So we had quite a sort of vocal battle going on. But I'm afraid that video is never going to see the light of day, Connor.
We'll find a way. We'll find a way of getting that out there somewhere. Who knows? Matt, is there anything you want to shout out while you're on here? And if people want to follow your antics with coaching and things like that these days.
Oh yeah, I suppose just my Twitter. There's not too much I tweet about. I'm, like you said, wrapped up in coaching, sort of a new club and getting to grips there. But no, I suppose just follow what you do, really. I've been sort of on and off involved with this channel now for quite a while. So yeah, just keep up to date and tune in, subscribe. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, my name's in my somewhere. No, wrong way. There, on screen.
Make sure you are following Max. If people don't know, obviously, I do run the show now, but it was once, Matt and the group of the 4 originals right at the very start of this channel. So, everything you're seeing now, there's so many of you in the chat and everything else. This guy to my left or right, depending on how you're watching this, was right there at the start of the foundations. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking out his Twitter as well. And good luck for the rest of your season as well, Matt, on that one. Thanks to everyone in the chat. As you said, obviously like the video, subscribe if you're new around here and all that kind of stuff. We're going to be back on Friday with our resident West Ham /Man United /Barca fan in Mia, discussing all things ahead of Sunday's game against West Ham. Obviously no Jace, no Jay Riviere for this one, so we're discussing obviously how we combat that, who's going to be playing in those ones. And yeah, I know there's not much to play for in the league, but as you're all in the chat, it's what our shows are by now. It's always a bit of fun regardless, so make sure you hop onto that one Friday 7 o'clock, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your evenings. I'll see you guys in the next one.